There's a new player in the DeFi space that everyone's been talking about, and in today's show we're going to be diving into exactly what makes 𝗔𝗍𝗄 so special and why they've been such a strong performer in 2025. So, if that sounds good to you, you know what to do. Let's get into the show. This video is for information and entertainment only. It reflects my personal opinions and is not financial advice. Check the description for more information. Always do your own research. Hey guys, I'm Alessandro. Welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about 𝗔𝗍𝗄, which is a DeFi credit-based protocol launched on Ethereum, Base and Solana, and it's doing two things differently to the rest of the kind of borrow-lend space. The first thing is it offers stable yield, so users can deposit USDC or USDT and they can earn a stable yield on that collateral. Normally those yields are varied because it depends upon how many borrowers and how many lenders are in the pool. Second, it gives institution access to capital, letting them deposit their Bitcoin or Ethereum and then borrowing against those tokens. This unlocks enormous liquidity for these institutions, but it prevents them needing to wrap their tokens and deposit them in something like 𝗟𝗲𝗍 as wrap Bitcoin. A lot of institutions simply cannot do that. They're not allowed to do that. It's beyond their scope of what is reasonable in terms of risk they can take. And a lot of general users as well don't really like wrapping up their Bitcoin. They want to keep it as fully native Bitcoin, which depositing it into Maple allows you to do. So depositors get steady yield, institutions get efficient borrowing, and 𝗔𝗍𝗄 stakers earn protocol rewards while helping keeping the protocol secure. Those rewards have actually been increased, there's a proposal to increase them from 20% to 25% very, very soon. That's voting on right now, which again just shows that the protocol is driving more value, if it can, back to token holders. So let's get into it. I'm going to reduce my screen down, and this is what 𝗔𝗍𝗄 look like. This is about 𝗔𝗍𝗄, about Maple, right? They're an OG project really. They were founded back in 2019. They were initially called Maple Finance, ticker MPL, and they recently changed the sort of the token to 𝗔𝗍𝗄. In the process of changing the token to 𝗔𝗍𝗄, they changed the tokenomics slightly. They allowed for increased inflation, so the token right now inflates at 5% a year, and that's going to continue until 2026, so next year, just to try and incentivize more usage of the platform. So the token's not fully diluted yet, plus they've got this ongoing 5% per year inflation that they are using to incentivize the platform. But they've got very strong partners, right? You can see Circle, Bitwise, Sky, massively important part, like really DeFi OG partners, plus Bitwise are a asset ETF fund, so real strong institutions as partners as well. Circle obviously massive, and the team is like TradFi specific. They've been in traditional finance for a very long time. You can see like BlackRock, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, and they're trying to bridge that gap between TradFi and DeFi and be the intermediary to bring institutions on chain in a way that their custodians allow them to be. And so there's two reasons why Maple has done so well recently. The first of which is because they're offering a stablecoin with stable yield, as we said. And so what does this look like? And so if we go to their app, right, we can see this app right now. If you deposit USDC, 6.9%. If you deposit USDT, 6.8%, right? You also get extra APY in the form of 𝗔𝗍𝗄 tokens by adding these drips, right? So if you have no commitment, then you get 1x drips if you commit for 3 months, 1.5x drips if you commit for 6 months, 3x drips. What does that mean? It means that if I was to deposit USDC into here and I deposited $1,000 and I committed for 6 months, then I would get 3 times the incentives as somebody who's depositing just 1 times. But they're just the extra 𝗔𝗍𝗄 incentives. The 6.8% stable yield, that stays the same. And that yield goes directly into this token, which is a yield-bearing token. So by holding this token in your wallet, you earn the yield. So you could effectively buy this token if you wanted to. You wouldn't even need to mint it. Just holding it in your wallet would yield the APY that Maple are paying, right? So it's a stablecoin that generates yield. And the reason it's been doing so well, the protocol generally, is because this stablecoin has been very, very strong. If we look at its relative performance against other yield-bearing stablecoins, Athena's USDE, for example, which has been a very, very strong one. When funding rates go up, USDE does really well. USDE is based upon the generating yield from the difference between ETH and staked ETH, and how that can create a consistent, stable yield, and then also adding funding rates on top of that. But Syrup has actually been beating USDC. Now the market's not been super hot, so you'd expect that USDE, Athena's stablecoin, does better when the market is overheated or heating up again. But you can see in Q2 it's beaten all its competitors. So you've got a stablecoin that's yielding stable returns, not varied, that's beating all of its competitors. That's pretty strong. You can also then go and use that stablecoin in DeFi, right? You can go and use it in Camino. You can deposit it straight into Camino to earn some yield. You can use it in Pendle. And you can see USDC, or Syrup's USDC usage is up only, right? Quite impressive. They're being used across DeFi now. So that's one of the reasons why they've been so successful. A yield-bearing stablecoin that's producing the best yields, plus that stablecoin's actually being used in DeFi. The second reason they've been so successful is because the products that they offer, if we go to enter app here, they offer an institutional arm, right? They offer borrowing and lending for institutions against digital assets, Bitcoin, ETH, Sol actually too. And so if you're an institution, you go through a KYC process, you can deposit 100K as a minimum, and you can deposit your whatever it is, your digital asset, natively. It hasn't got to be wrapped, which again is a really important thing. It hasn't got to be wrapped or anything. You deposit that into Maple, and that Maple allows you to take out loans against that. Now, the loans are actually created because users are going and depositing USDC for Syrup USDC, as we saw here, right? This money here is then bridged across and used to be the collateral that those Bitcoin, well, those digital, the institutions are borrowing against. So they're acting as that intermediary between DeFi and CeFi, right? But the CeFi that they're obviously acting as an intermediary between is still digital asset based. It's just that these particular institutions, as we said, they can't take risks of going and using specific DeFi protocols a lot of the time. For example, we know that some of Maple's partners are Bitwise, right? Now, Bitwise are an ETF. They are a Bitcoin ETF, and they currently hold $4.85 billion in Bitcoin in their BTC ETF trust fund, right? You can't go and deposit that into 𝗟𝗲𝗍, right? It's just not happening. But you could imagine a world where Maple will take a tokenized version of the BTC ETF that you hold with Bitwise, and you can deposit it with Maple and borrow against it if you wanted to, buy a house against your Bitcoin and not have to sell your Bitcoin, or some reason that you needed liquidity against your Bitcoin. So they're offering the real institutional grade borrowing against those digital assets, which are inherently illiquid unless they're sold, right? Because those institutions can't use those DeFi applications a lot of the time because they're prohibited by the rules, whether it's jurisdictional rules or whether it's just the rules of the fund. They can't go and use those protocols because the risk is too high. And that's allowed them to grow all their metrics quarter over quarter, month over month, very successfully, right? So if we look here at TVL, again, we've seen up and to the right. Active loans, up and to the right, right? You want to see that. As TVL goes up, you want to see these, like a company like Maple, or a protocol like Maple, having people actually borrowing against that TVL, because that's where their revenue comes from. So we can see here, as TVL's gone up, active loans have gone up. There is a small gap here actually, and that gap ideally would get closed. The closer this gap is, the more revenue the protocol is creating. But you can see quarter over quarter, their revenues are going up consistently, right? massive increase between Q1 25 and Q2 25, and actually this number is going to go up again in Q3 because this number is not quite 3 mil, and according to Artemis right now, their annualized revenue on the last 30 days is $15 million, which is, just about 3.75 a quarter or so. So you can see TVL's up and to the right, revenue continuing to trend upwards. As TVL is going up, they're able to generate more revenue on the assets that they have because they can issue more loans against those assets. This is actually putting them right now at a market cap to revenue ratio, which is, typical price per earnings ratio in TradFi. Not quite the same because it's not exactly the same by any means. There's like expenses and all kinds of other stuff to consider, but market cap to revenue ratio 34x is quite good, to be honest. It's not the best by any means, but it's still decent. And a market cap to fully diluted ratio of 38. So as their revenues go up though, these numbers obviously can come up and down. As market cap increases, you'd expect revenues to increase and vice versa. And the thing about Maple, right, is they tap into the RWA narrative too. You can deposit stablecoins there. So right now, they're the third largest tokenized treasury fund or the tokenized private credit protocol in crypto. Figure this one here is kind of massive. They do loans against property. Honestly, not even sure how that works. It's crazy. On-chain loans against property just sounds wild, but that's what they're doing. Tradable are sort of on-chain capital for startups almost. And then obviously you've got Maple here. Again, institutional borrowing borrowing for institutions against assets against digital assets. And they're growing with this RWA market. And if we think about where the RWA market can get to, right? The RWA market is right now, from a tokenized private credit perspective, about $15 billion total. Now, by 2030, it's not unreasonable because the rate of growth has been so aggressive to see this go from, ChatGPT thinks, around $150 billion, so plus or minus $50 billion off of that. You've got a range of $100 to $200 billion in tokenized private credit. If Maple hold some level of relevancy that they've got at the moment, which is 9% of the market, 8% of the market, then this puts them at enormous amount of TVL, right? 15 billion, 22 billion, 30 billion, if they grow with the market, which is not an unreasonable assumption to make. And the thing about Maple, right, it's very interesting, is they're essentially chain agnostic. It doesn't really matter if Ethereum wins or Bitcoin wins or Solana wins. It doesn't even matter if it's stablecoins that win. And actually the only thing that blockchains are used for is transacting stablecoins on chain. They are in a position to thrive essentially regardless of what particular chain wins or what particular narrative wins. I'll explain very simply why, right? If it's stables that win, people are going to want to earn yield on their stables. Great. Syrup USDC can do very well in that environment. If it's Ethereum that wins, great. Syrup is already launched on Ethereum. You can already borrow against your ETH in an institutional manner. You've already got that arm of the business already. Great, it can win in that environment. If Bitcoin happens to win, well, they're already the go-to place for institutions to borrow against their Bitcoin. It can win in that case too. So there's lots of arms, there's lots of scenarios in which whatever blockchains end up being used for, Syrup has a chance of excelling in all those cases, right? And it's already doing well across the board. So it's already in a good position to capitalize on an increasing RWA market, an increasing Bitcoin market, an increasing total, if the total crypto market goes up, there's a good chance that Syrup can capitalize on that. And if we go through their products now, these are the sort of products they offer, right? They offer this interesting Bitcoin native yield product, which basically means that you deposit your Bitcoin with them, and in return, they stake that Bitcoin through 𝗁𝗏. 𝗁𝗏 pay out APY natively. You stake both core with this blockchain and Bitcoin. The APYs are paid in core tokens, emissions from the network. Those emissions can be sold from core back to Bitcoin to earn a stable yield in Bitcoin. Now, Maple, if you deposit with Maple, when you do this, they hedge the core position because essentially they deposit Bitcoin. You borrow core against the Bitcoin, which sounds risky, but that position is hedged, and so they just earn a small portion of the yield. The Bitcoin stays native, it's staked natively, and this small portion of yield is then converted back into Bitcoin. Obviously the hedged position is taken off of that, but the net is some accrued value in Bitcoin. They also have the Syrup USD. They've also got staked Syrup, right? So Syrup itself, the token, obviously we have this value accrual mechanism back to Syrup. 20 to potentially soon 25% of revenues is used to rebuy Syrup on the open market. The Syrup that's bought is then distributed to stakers via staking rewards. So only stakers get the value accrual mechanism. It's an important point. Syrup have chosen to reward holders or stakers of their token over holders. And then they also have this lend and long BTC play as well, which is kind of interesting. Let me just show you it quickly. What you do with this is you deposit USDC in a lending protocol, and they offer 4% as a base rate, right? So regardless how BTC does, they give you 4%. With the remainder of the yield, because remember their yield was about 6%, they take the remainder of the yield and they buy call options on Bitcoin. Real simply, a call option is just you buy something today, and if it hits a certain price in the future, you can buy it off them in the future. You pay a small amount today and you pay the whole amount in the future. They use these call strategies to basically increase the net APY on this particular Bitcoin, on this particular borrowing, this lending strategy. And you can earn anywhere up to 33% depending on how well Bitcoin does, right? So if I just show you this quickly, this is the sort of like, if Bitcoin doesn't do great, you just earn your standard 4%. If it does pretty well, you earn considerably more until the peak, in which you can't earn any more than 32%. But Bitcoin's going to need to go up like 33% in the period for you to get that total APY right. It's an interesting play on depositing almost like a premium bond. If you don't know what a premium bond is, it's like a lottery ticket. It's like a bond plus a lottery ticket. And so you can see they've got these different products, right? This is their product suite. The Vault, so BTC yield, Syrup yield, stake Syrup yield, Syrup USD yield, stake Syrup yield, the lend and long. And they're constantly trying to increase their product suite to attract more users. The increase of their product suite, the increase of their TVL, I'm just going to reduce my screen a minute. The increase of their product suite, the increase of their TVL, all contribute to more revenue that the protocol makes. The more revenue the protocol makes, the more revenue they can reward by buying back the token and distributing to stakers, and just generally the better the overall mechanisms of the protocol are going to be, because if they're making more revenue, the market tends to like that and is probably going to reward them with consistent increases in just like token price, right? Because when protocols can demonstrate they're making a lot of money, we've seen typically the market really likes that. We've seen that with Hyperliquid. We've seen that recently with Syrup itself, right? As it's been making more money, the market has actually liked it quite a lot. So hopefully you understand why they've been successful in 2025. Hint, hint. Good stable coin that's generating good yield, plus actual product market fit, institutions genuinely using their product. Those two things, well, any sort of product market fit in crypto tends to do very, very well, especially if it's some kind of protocol that earns revenue. This is the deep dive into Syrup. If you want to see different deep dives, check out this link here and this link here. I do deep dives on this channel a lot. I really find it very interesting to go deep under the hood of a protocol, see exactly why it is that they're succeeding, what the mechanisms of the protocol are, and try and make it in such a manner that it's beginner friendly so you can understand it regardless of your crypto level right now. So if that sounds good to you, go check out one of those videos. Otherwise, I shall see you in the next one. Thank you ever so much for watching.